It wasn't the creaking floors or the shadowed corridors that lingered. It was the silence, heavy, intelligent, watching. The Changeling didn't scream to terrify, it whispered, and those whispers never left. In 1980, amidst a rising tide of slashers and gore-driven horror, this Canadian production chose restraint. But behind its quiet facade lies a film riddled with haunted truths, both on-screen and off. From ghostly inspirations rooted in real-life terror to sets rumored to have been touched by something unexplainable, The Changeling refuses to be dismissed as just another ghost story. It's the kind of film that hides in plain sight, never loud, never desperate. Yet years later, filmmakers like James Wan cite it as blueprint. And that infamous bouncing ball? It's more than a prop, it's a pulse. These are 20 weird facts you didn't know about The Changeling, a film that didn't chase fear, but waited patiently until you came to it. And once you did, it never let go. Fact 1. The haunting that wrote itself. Before The Changeling was ever filmed, it was lived. Screenwriter Russell Hunter claimed he didn't invent the ghost story, he survived it. In the late 1960 seconds, Hunter rented an old mansion near Cheeseman Park in Denver, Colorado. What began as a quiet retreat turned into a chronicle of terror. He described phantom noises, violently shaking walls, and the inexplicable appearance of water pooling on hardwood floors. But what truly unhinged him was the discovery of a hidden room in the attic, complete with a child's dusty wheelchair and a small, locked trunk. Inside that trunk, a journal, a name, a date of death that didn't match any death certificate tied to the property. Hunter fled the house shortly after and never returned. Many believe he embellished the tale, but others insist the fear was real, especially when you learn that the city eventually demolished the house without public explanation. Was it just aging wood and paranoia, or a memory too cursed to be preserved? Fact 2. A house built from ghosts. The sprawling Gothic mansion that towers over the film wasn't real, not a single brick of it. The exterior shots were matte paintings, the interiors, elaborate sets built on a Vancouver soundstage, yet somehow, it feels real, unsettlingly so. Production designers were tasked with constructing a haunted house from the ground up, not to impress, but to disturb. The ceilings were made intentionally high to dwarf the protagonist. The staircase was built to echo, amplifying the sound of the bouncing ball scene. And the wheelchair? It was designed to roll just slightly askew, as if pushed by an invisible force. Here's where it turns. Crew members began reporting strange happenings on set. Tools went missing. Cold spots appeared in isolated corners. One lighting technician refused to return after hearing what he described as crying, but not human. Can an artificial house, built for fiction, accidentally trap something real? Fact 3. The bouncing ball was never supposed to return. That iconic scene, the moment the red ball bounces down the staircase on its own, wasn't in the script the way it played out. Initially, the idea was simple. The protagonist discards the ball to reject the past. But during filming, the prop team made an eerie mistake. They used the same marked ball in both scenes, despite instructions to swap it. What happened next shocked everyone on set. When the ball appeared at the top of the stairs again, ready to bounce, the timing was flawless. It wasn't rigged. It wasn't cued. It just happened. George C. Scott's reaction wasn't acting, it was disbelief. Some say it was an editing trick. Others whisper that something didn't want to let go of the object. Why would a prop defy direction? Or perhaps the better question is, who brought it back? Fact 4. The composer who refused to compose. When producers approached renowned composer Rick Wilkins to score The Changeling, he initially declined, not because he wasn't interested, but because he was afraid. After reading the script and watching the early cuts, Wilkins confessed he felt unnerved in a way music couldn't fix. He wasn't alone. Several musicians hired to perform the score walked out mid-session, citing a presence in the recording booth. Eventually, Wilkins agreed to compose, but only under one condition: he would never set foot inside the studio alone. The resulting soundtrack is minimalist, mournful, and eerily dissonant, as if every note avoids resolution, just like the ghost in the film. Here's what haunts audiophiles to this day. Parts of the score contain dissonant sounds no one recalls recording. Some attribute them to analog error. Others believe they're audio imprints, echoes of something else in the room. Are these just technical flaws, or the soundtrack of a house that scored itself? Fact 5. George C. Scott wasn't acting, he was angry. George C. Scott, known for his commanding presence and refusal to tolerate nonsense, was reportedly difficult on set. But during one particular scene, the seance, his reaction wasn't scripted. After a long day of shooting, frustrated with technical delays and the eerie atmosphere, Scott lashed out mid-take, pounding the table and shouting. The camera kept rolling, The director loved it. That unscripted moment stayed in the final cut. What's chilling is what happened after. The seance table cracked down the center hours later, without any pressure applied. No one had touched it. No one was near it. Scott remained silent the next day. He never commented on it. Some say his outburst awakened the film's core, not the ghost, but the grief. Could it be that raw human pain was what the house needed to respond? Fact 6. The real ghost in the studio hallway. During a late-night edit session, an assistant editor noticed something odd in the hallway footage. A mirror, visible for only a second in a transitional shot, showed a figure not part of the cast or crew, pale, unmoving, with no shadow. Initially dismissed as a lighting anomaly, the team decided to cut the shot. But when they reviewed the footage weeks later, it was gone. Not cut, gone. The raw reel no longer contained the mirror or the reflection. It had simply erased itself. No backup held the frame. No explanation surfaced. And when the assistant tried to describe the figure to others, she broke down crying, not from fear, but from recognition. "It looked like someone I'd lost," she whispered, "but older, like they were still waiting." Was it an editing glitch, a hallucination, or did the film briefly become a mirror of something it should never have captured? Fact 7. The director didn't want his name on the film. Peter Medak, the Hungarian-born director of The Changeling, almost took his name off the final cut. Not out of shame, but fear. Known for being intensely private and deeply sensitive to emotional subject matter, Medak found the production emotionally invasive. He described a growing discomfort on set, particularly during scenes involving the spirit child. Rumors spread that Medak would walk off set after certain scenes and refuse to return for hours. Crew members said he appeared drained, almost dissociated. He later confessed he felt like someone else was directing those sequences, someone who didn't belong to the crew. Despite critical acclaim, Medak rarely spoke about the film in interviews. He once admitted, "I don't know where some of those decisions came from. It was like the film directed itself in the final weeks." So, was The Changeling shaped by human hands or channeled through something else? Fact 8. The missing reel that reappeared scratched. During the film's development, one of the key reels containing scenes from the seance and attic mysteriously vanished in transit between editing rooms. Panic ensued. The scenes were critical, and reshooting would have been impossible due to budget constraints. 2 days later, the reel reappeared, left neatly on the editor's desk. No note, no sign of forced entry. But the film strip had changed. The scenes were still intact, but fine, hairline scratches now ran diagonally through the image, and only during the moments where the spirit manifests. Technicians called it an environmental glitch, but what made no sense? The reel had been stored in a sealed case, in climate-controlled conditions. Why would a ghost story be haunted by its own footage? Fact 9. The conductor who didn't blink. In the concert hall scene where George C. Scott's character uncovers clues tied to the ghost's past, an extra was cast as the conductor of the orchestra. Nothing unusual until post-production. When editors reviewed the footage, they noticed something deeply unsettling. The conductor never blinked, not once. Thinking it was just a quirk, they asked the extra back in for reshoots, but no one could find his contact info. His name wasn't in the casting log. His contract didn't exist. The scene remains in the film. The conductor, motionless, expressionless, and unblinking, guides the orchestra in perfect silence. He's become one of the film's unofficial ghosts. Was it just an oversight, a lucky coincidence, or a silent cameo from someone who was never meant to be seen, only felt? Fact 10. The chair that rolled uphill. During filming of the infamous wheelchair scene where the antique chair seemingly moves on its own, the crew set up a complex pulley system to ensure controlled motion. The chair was meant to roll down a hallway toward the camera. But during the first take, something inexplicable happened. The chair rolled backward, uphill, against the incline. No wires were active, no wind, no vibration. It simply reversed its path, slowly and deliberately. The crew laughed nervously and reset the scene. But the footage was reviewed later that night and showed a chilling detail. The wheels weren't spinning naturally. They moved in short, hesitant jerks as if being resisted by something unseen. Eventually, the scene was reshot with full control. But that original take? It was never deleted. The reel sits in a locked vault, never publicly released. The director once whispered, "I didn't cut it because it was bad. I cut it because it felt invited." Fact 11. The child actor who was never hired. A soft child's cry is heard several times throughout The Changeling, echoing through the house at critical moments. Viewers assumed it was sound design or a child actor dubbed in. But here's the catch. No child was ever hired. No recording sessions were logged. The production had 0 children on set, and sound engineers insisted they only used ambient tones, not vocal samples. When questioned, the sound editor swore the cry appeared after final mixing. The waveform didn't match any known track. It just existed faint, pleading, echoing through silence. Some call it pareidolia. Others suspect someone added it as a joke, but the sound persists. And those who listen with headphones at full volume say the voice isn't crying, it's whispering a name. What name? Depends who you ask. Some hear Joseph, others hear their own. Fact 12. The typewriter that typed overnight. Director Peter Medak reportedly kept a typewriter in his production office, using it for notes and script tweaks. One morning, he arrived to find a full-page typed, single-spaced, no margins. He hadn't written it. No one claimed responsibility. The contents? Gibberish, random letters. But when given to a cryptography expert as a curiosity, the man noted patterns that resembled a 19th century cipher once used in Victorian morning correspondence. Even stranger, when the page was left alone for hours, letters began to fade. By sundown, the page was blank, just paper again. Medak burned it the next day, but his assistant kept a photocopy. Years later, it was examined under infrared light and revealed faint impressions of a message. Tell them the boy was taken, not dead. Was it a prank? Or was someone or something still trying to rewrite the truth? Fact 13. The missing reflection in the bathroom scene. In one quiet scene, George C. Scott's character enters a bathroom, gazes into a mirror, and turns away. A fleeting, transitional shot, nothing remarkable. Until viewers notice something that wasn't there. Scott has no reflection. Initially dismissed as a lighting error, the production re-examined the footage. Every technical setting was correct. Other mirrored shots worked fine. But in this one, his image simply doesn't appear. Not even a blur. Just the room behind him untouched. Some fans believe it was a metaphor that Scott's character had already become part of the house. Others suggest it's a spiritual echo, a cinematic nod to ghost lore. But the strangest theory? That the shot wasn't in the original cut. Older VHS copies contain a slightly different angle. Only in the remastered version does the missing reflection appear. So, which edit is the real one? And more chilling, who decided to change it and why? Fact 14. The house number that changed overnight. Exterior shots of the haunted mansion show a clear number, 187, etched into the stone arch. But several viewers, including some cast and crew, recall filming under a different number, 113. Script notes even refer to the house as 113. So why does the final cut show 187? No one knows. What's more bizarre, in the original script draft found in a film archive, the page containing the address has been ripped out. Not cleanly torn jaggedly, as if removed in a rush. The digital version submitted to the studio? That line is simply missing. Some fans dug deeper. In spiritual numerology, 113 refers to a soul in exile. But 187? In police code, it refers to homicide. Was it a deliberate shift? A production error? Or did the house insist on telling its own story? Fact 15. The sealed envelope that no one opened. In a prop drawer in the study room set, a sealed envelope labeled 4JC was placed as set dressing. JC was presumed to be the initials of Scott's character, John Russell. The envelope was never meant to be opened, never filmed up close, just background texture. After the film wrapped, one curious crew member took the envelope as a memento. He didn't open it for years. When he finally did, he found a single sheet of paper, entirely blank. No writing, no watermark, but under UV light, faint impressions appeared like invisible ink that never fully developed. One word was legible: remember. The crew member tried to donate the envelope to a film museum. They declined. The curator said, "We don't archive things that rewrite themselves." Is it a coincidence, a prank, or a message meant for someone else entirely? Fact 16. The window that wouldn't stay shut. During production, one particular window on the second story set refused to cooperate. Despite being latched, bolted, and sealed with tape, the window was found open multiple mornings in a row. The first time, they blamed faulty carpentry. The second time, sabotage. But on the third morning, security footage revealed something stranger. At precisely 3:13 a.m., the latch unfastened itself. No wind, no vibration, just movement deliberate, smooth, slow. The footage was shown to the team. George C. Scott refused to comment. The director ordered the window to be nailed shut. It remained that way for the rest of the shoot, until the final day of filming, when the window was found wide open again, nails still intact, but bent outward from the inside. Some say it was a rigging flaw. Others say something wanted out, or worse, back in. Fact 17. The deleted scene that no one deleted. A key emotional scene where John Russell finds a music box that plays a familiar lullaby was present during test screenings. Audiences praised it. Critics noted its eerie tenderness, but when the final cut was delivered to distributors, the scene was gone. Editors insisted they hadn't removed it. The reel wasn't missing, the scene was simply never there. Not on backups, not on raw dailies, just gone. To this day, fans remember the scene in vivid detail. Some even quote lines of dialogue that don't exist in any version. A mass hallucination? Mandela effect, or a scene so intimate, so revealing that the house itself erased it? Fact 18. The bell that rang on no track. Sound engineers often overlay subtle background noise to enhance atmosphere. In The Changeling, a soft bell chime can be heard in several scenes, faint, distant, barely noticeable, but no such sound effect was ever added. Not in the mix, not in the design. At first, they assumed it was background contamination, but when they isolated each audio track, the bell was there on none of them. Yet when all tracks played together, the bell reappeared. Always at the same pitch, always at the same timing, just as characters were about to discover something vital. The lead audio technician became obsessed. He charted its appearances and found a pattern. Every bell chime coincided with a real death in the house's fictional backstory. Eventually, he stopped coming to work. No explanation. But he left behind a note. The bell doesn't warn the characters. It warns us. Fact 19. The doorknob that burned cold. There's a pivotal moment in The Changeling where a doorknob slowly turns on its own, an image simple in design but heavy with dread. For the prop team, creating that effect required subtle wirework and a custom mechanism hidden behind the door. But the first knob they installed kept malfunctioning, not by freezing or jamming, but by becoming ice cold to the touch. Crew members reported frost forming around the base. One grip developed blisters that resembled frostbite, despite filming under studio heat. Thermal cameras picked up a chilling anomaly. The knob's temperature dropped by over 20 degrees in seconds, then returned to normal. No electrical source, no coolant leak. Eventually, they replaced the knob and reshot the scene, but the original prop was stored away, and when examined months later, it remained cold in a sealed box. Can fear radiate outward? Or did the house leave part of itself embedded in brass? Fact 20. The actor who dreamed the ending. Shortly before filming wrapped, George C. Scott reportedly approached the director with a strange request to change the ending. Not because of artistic differences, but because he'd seen it. Scott described a dream, the house collapsing, the wheelchair burning, and a small figure watching from the rubble, not sad, not angry, just free. He said it was more honest than the script's original ending. Medak agreed. They rewrote and reshot the final sequence in a matter of days. The revised ending became iconic, emotionally ambiguous, visually haunting, thematically perfect. Here's the twist. Scott later claimed he hadn't dreamed it. He'd remembered it from a time, he said, before the film was made. Was it déjà vu? Prophetic instinct? Or did the Changeling write itself through him? Bonus fact. The basement that wasn't in the script. While location scouting, the crew found an old Vancouver home slated for demolition. It wasn't on the original schedule, but something about its silence drew them in. As they explored, they found a basement door heavy, iron-latched, not listed in any blueprint. It wasn't part of the plan, but the director asked to film a short insert scene there anyway. Just ambiance. When they reviewed the footage days later, they noticed a pale face watching from the shadows, far in the back behind rusted pipes, half seen in the flicker of dying light. They hadn't cast an extra. No one had been placed down there. The basement has since been sealed. The house was torn down, but the footage remains. In interviews, Medak only said this: "We went looking for a ghost story, and I think something found us instead." So, which fact stayed with you after the screen went dark? Was it the unblinking conductor, the envelope that rewrote itself, or the missing child's cry that no one recorded? The Changeling isn't just a film, it's a question whispered through time. Tell us in the comments, was this all coincidence? Or did the house decide what got remembered? And which film should we open the next locked door to?